We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of information that we're going to share with you today. So again, welcome. This is 2026 Human Risk Management Trends, what security leaders need next. And we have three amazing presenters that will be sharing with you today. I'm going to go ahead and intro. We have Ashley Rose. She is our co-founder and CEO here at Living Security. She will be joined by Mark Collura, the VP of Sales at Living Security, and Kevin Martin, our Director of Strategic Accounts. Without further ado, I am going to pass it off to them. Now, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please go ahead and utilize that Q&A function with Zoom. That will submit your questions directly to us, and we'll make sure that we can go ahead and read through them and get them answered at the end of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. Thanks for that fabulous intro. So make sure everyone can see our video. Are we good, Kevin? I know
I can see the video.
Okay,
yes, thank you.
Well, yeah, as Leanne mentioned, I'm up here in beautiful Boston. If you can see kind of like out the window behind Kevin, we're right here in the Seaport District. And we came out here a little early to set up, and I was, laughing a little bit because, pre-COVID, we all did this always in person, and now we're struggling to figure out how to do it. But I think the technology is here, good energy, good vibes in the room, and excited to dig into these trends. Great to see so many of you here joining us as well. So we're going to dive into our trends, Mark, if you want to set us up here. All right, so maybe no surprise, the first trend that we're calling for is going into 2026, human error won't be the villain anymore. And, I think for many of you, this probably already resonates, but as we think about the majority of organizations, and I hear it daily talking to CISOs and program owners, right? We're still pointing at the user and saying, bad user when blaming the employees because, still to date, we have 80% plus of our security incidents being the root cause of employees, right? Some sort of human error. But my prediction is especially with AI tools showing us why people are making mistakes, whether it's confusing workflows or complex UIs, UXs, companies are going to realize that most human error isn't a result of people not caring about security, right? It's actually the systems around them really being reactive and not predictive. And so my prediction is that leaders are going to start using their data to design processes that are reducing friction for their teams instead of handing out more training. And we're already starting to see some of these teams making this shift. And then the result is fewer incidents, fewer missteps, and really happier employees. And so, Mark, Kevin, we recently put out a report a few months ago that actually helped to inspire some of this conversation and some of this trend as we look forward. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I found most interesting about the CISO report was 90% of employees are bringing more vigilance into the organization. So for me, that produces context, right? There's always these narratives that we tell ourselves that data can correct or validate. We have a lot of employees doing way more good than bad. Whereas 5 years ago, I feel like the conversation was, hey, that department or that team and those people. And I think the context to what risk really means and where it presents itself and some corrective actions that we can take. I think the data is starting to streamline a lot of what we know to be best practices. So that's exciting for us to get the validation, to get the understanding of what's happening at the employee level, and then seeing what our organizations are doing with that information.
Yeah, I agree. I think the data is now allowing a lot of the security teams to take the approach you already want. I have the privilege to talk to prospective customers as well as existing customers, and repetitively now, they're constantly telling me, we want a positive program. This is not a punitary program. We're talking to you about implementing a new program, transforming our program. We look at our end employees as our teammates. These are people we trust. These are people we want to honor. So I think the positive intent is there with our customers, but I think the data and now the technology is going to finally give them the ability to implement a program that does that.
Yeah. And this touches a little bit on sort of like the natural human tendencies. Like a lot of us are wired to like look for the bad. We want to find the problem spots. I mean, this is like ultimately security, right? So where's the risk? Like, how do I squash it? How do I mitigate it? But like I've seen more and more that when companies first start implementing HRM, what are some of the first workflows, some of the first action plans they're doing? They're recognizing good behavior because they're saying, we don't want our employees to butt up against this new program. We don't want them to see Slack, Microsoft Teams nudges, like the new living security platform we implemented is like a surveillance tool. And I think we'll talk about that earlier. They're saying like, how can I send positive reinforcement out to the people that are doing the right things? And that helps to build that culture of trust. And then we can build on and we sort of earn the right with our teams then to go a little bit deeper and start pointing out some of the places we need them to get better at, right?
And then we're also starting to see like some of the good that came from some compliance programs. We used to always hear about gamification. How do we gamify? How do we get, now it's based on the data. Like you can make this a fun exercise, department versus department. Who can improve? Your team versus my team. How can I improve month over month? So I think we can take a lot of the good of the foundation that was there and shift it more into kind of a data-driven approach. I think the worlds can blend very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, let's move on to trend 2 then. I think, these ones ultimately go hand in hand. Security training will go personal and compliance will shrink to a checkbox. Security training for compliance isn't going away. We talk to customers all the time. Maybe many of us wish it would, but the fact of the matter is that NIST still says we need to have it. PCI still says we need to have it. And if any of us are going to be breached, have an incident, we know we're going to need to cover our butts, right?
Sure.
And so we need to acknowledge that for what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's an audit and compliance checkbox. And so my prediction is that the real shift is going to be that everything beyond compliance is going to be risk-based. And more, we're going to see one of two things happen. And this is really, I think, driven by the leadership, by the CISO. Some organizations are leaning heavily into opt-out, test out, right? Can I get people the content? And this is a little bit working in that GRC and the audit conversations, like, is this sufficient for me to report on? If so, great, let's do it. And then let's move on to understanding where you really need help. On the flip side, they're saying, is there an opportunity to more thoroughly personalize that training that we need everyone to go through? And so we're seeing companies adopt both sides of that. And so what does that mean? That we need to start adopting tools to really understand the human behavior, right? If we're going to start trying to personalize it, 1, 2, 3 team members can't do that in a 100,000 person organization. And so it's going to require scale, right? It's going to require more operations and heavy lifting. And so at the end of the day, behavioral risk intelligence is going to replace the generic awareness programs. And we're going to have a clearer picture of who needs support before that incident happens. So what are you guys hearing on the front lines? Like, what are people coming in asking for?
Personalization is key right now, but I think it's in it. Yes, of course, if it's more personalized, I'm more likely to learn from it. I'm more likely to understand from it. I'm more likely to appreciate it. But I'm also more likely to accept it, right? If it's just assigned to me carte blanche across the organization, you almost feel as if I'm not the problem. Why do I have to do this? And don't get me wrong, there is part of being a good corporate citizen. There is compliance training. There's things you need to do. But if it is personalized and you're sharing with me, which we haven't got to yet, but we can get to. These are the threats that are coming towards me. These are my personal behaviors. This is my level of access. And I understand the reason that you're asking me to do this, then I don't resist, that I'm much more willing to accept. And I'm probably not clicking through it as fast as possible, just trying to end it and hit submit. I'm probably paying a little bit more attention and learning from it because it's not only is it personalized, the reason and the justification for me receiving it is also personalized. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little different spin. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the way it's showing up in a lot of conversations and the way I distill it down is status quo is no longer good enough, right? We've been talking about this risk management thing for years, and now it's starting to feel like, whether it's Forrester's data saying it's the early majority starting now, we're seeing it in our growth with customers coming on board for it. Just feels like we can do better now, and there's tooling available to us to actually enable the deployment of this. So I feel like this is an exciting trend because it's measurable, you can feel it, and I think it's within reach now, right? So we've always known personalization is better. And why are we training on things that people are already doing well? Why don't we focus on the things they need support on? A lot of that is common sense, but how do we do that at scale? And I think that's where we're picking up steam. It's becoming obvious the path here, and it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of something different, something new, measurable, a lot of trial and error in some of this. But I think the enemy, right? We talk about it all the time. You're looking for progress, not perfection. And I think that's the big trend I'm feeling, where it's time to do something better because we're better, right, than the way we're training and promoting security out to the organization.
Yeah, and I could not agree more with everything said. I think some of the complexities, understanding the enterprise, you can say, well, first, how do I create the personalized training? Well, first, how do I have the data to know what to do, right? I have an answer for that. All right, well, how do I create training at scale? We've got, AI content creation coming down the pipe, and some people are already using, right, these ad hoc tools to do it. But like, we can't underestimate the complexities of reporting as well. And so being able to have a system where you get a question from an auditor that says, show me that this individual or this department took all their training, it hit all of these key competencies, and being able to do that quick and to the point, and like having that ready to go is so important. And this is an area that I personally seen as we have started implementing a lot of AI tooling internally, where AI can help quite a bit. And so I'm really excited and optimistic about being able to kind of close all of those operational gaps when it comes to that higher level of personalization in the compliance angle.
I think you're leading into the next trend, Ashley.
All right, trend 3. We could play a game of how many times we talk about AI, but it's here. I'm an optimist at heart. So when we think about trend 3, AI will find identity weak spots faster than IT can patch them. And I think we can think about this from both angles, right? From an adversary's approach, of course, the adversaries are deploying AI. They're always going to find and look to find the easiest way in, right? It's why phishing has been like the #1 threat vector forever. But we can also think about it internally. How do we use AI to internally pen test and find our own identity weak spots? And so, this is the year the AI starts discovering those flaws at a speed that no human team can keep up with. Attackers are going to use AI to map weak authentication, stale permissions and risky accounts, not only in minutes, but really in seconds. And this is really going to start pushing companies into continuous identity hardening instead of just quarterly cleanups. And at the end of the year, by the end of the year, I believe identity hygiene is going to be a core board metric, not just an IT chore. And so, at the end of the day, like, what changes? It's behavior. To me, behavior is the X factor here, right? Identity privileges cannot just be at the role or the job title alone. We have to continuously monitor. We need to understand the risk that user is bringing to the environment on their day-to-day work. And we need to be able to respond and try to mitigate and shut that down as fast as possible.
It comes up all the time. So we're looking at identity data. It's the 10% conversation comes into what you layer on top of the primary risk. So there's a certain profile that has access to data. So what? What do we add to that? What behavioral data? What external threat data? What dark web data do we bring to add to that profile to get narrowed to the biggest risk within that cohort? So it's been this conversation's picked up very quickly. Like we need to understand these profiles better. And this is coming up almost on a daily basis now.
It comes up daily because it's the obvious application of AI, right? Disparate data, siloed data, threat data, identity data, behavioral data. The quicker you can correlate that data, bring it together, score that data, make it actionable, the more vigilant we're going to be, right? I mean, this is such an obvious use case, I feel, for AI, and I think that's why it is coming up on a daily basis. It's going to make us all that much more quick, fast, vigilant. That future is here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if we point to other areas of security where we've seen this just advance at rapid speeds, it's the SPM markets, right? It's the cloud security posture management. We've seen like AI continuous monitoring and hardening of controls across everywhere else. Of course, like human is the last. And so, I've had a couple of Gartner conversations. Do we see like a human security posture management category evolving? I think close tangential to
That could be
the
another
human, but
trend for us. How many more
how many
taglines can we
acronyms
put
we
on
bring
this?
to the HRM landscape?
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact of the matter is this is, common sense, and
Yeah.
we're seeing it be applied
Yeah.
across security. We see it applied in identity. ITDR was a big, acronym that we saw really in 2025, started out coming out in 2024. Obviously AI is front and center now, but it's all aiming for the same thing, right? Real-time monitoring, real-time response. And we need to move faster because AI is already here doing it.
Absolutely.
All right,
What do we got?
trend 4. Another AI one. All right, we're going to talk about humans and AI agents finally being managed as one workforce. And I think the major trend here, and we launched, what was it, about a month or two ago? I mean, time is just going by so quickly. At our human risk management conference that we hosted in Austin, with many of our wonderful customers, where we unveiled, the future of our AI native HRM platform. And we said, really, we need to think about this as more broadly workforce security and workforce risk management. Because right now, many organizations, adopting tools, they're kind of expanding what a user can do, giving them more scale, giving them more speed. But more and more, we're starting to see agents, replacing certain roles or expanding certain roles or giving teams scale, and they're interacting with us like coworkers. And it's here, right? It's already happening. And so, I talked to a lot of CISOs, and we say your CEO, your CIO is saying adopt AI, right? It's a core business metric. How fast can we adopt AI? How much AI are we using? Hey, here's your AI budget. Go spend it, right? And so you have the business recognizing that if you don't do it, you're at a competitive disadvantage. And then on the flip side, you have security teams and CISOs that are like, whoa, like I'm already trying to get a handle on, my employees, the ones that are non-deterministic, right? That are making decisions like, now I have these AI agents as employees. Yes, they're here. And so my prediction is not only are they going to be here, but because they are, and because, security leaders, we don't sit back and wait for bad things to happen. We know it's going to come. We have to be proactive. And so the question becomes, what's the right approach for us to get a handle on the future of the workforce? I think it starts with inventories. I think it starts with identifying like what's in our environment. Many of us have no idea still, right? We don't know what agents our employees are interacting with. We've seen some companies, they take a very stark, like block and deny approach for everything. Others are like, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. We're like leaning into innovation, and I like love that too. There's probably some, middle ground, maybe like redirecting, but like, let's get a handle on who's using what, where, why, when. Next, it's going to be how do we get a handle on, some of the core identity principles, right? What are these agents interacting with? What do they have access to? Next, right, much like human risk management, we now need to monitor. We need to see what's the behavior looking like of these agents. Are they governed correctly? Are they acting within guardrails? We need to look at threats. And so I'm predicting that we're going to look at AI agents and humans as sort of one unified workforce in 2026. What do you guys think? What do you personally, even like, how are you guys using AI today?
I that's a whole nother as much as I possibly can.
Well, first you can say that to me as well.
But we live in a capitalistic society, right? AI is inevitable. It's not a question. It is inevitable. And from a capitalistic point of view, whatever is repeatable is replaceable. And so large organizations, who are the majority of the companies that we work with, are going to look for every opportunity to use AI to do those repeatable processes and save their human capital for higher value tasks, right? So you're absolutely right. There's always going to be the security team saying, hey, how do we throttle this? How do we hold this back? Just as we started years ago, we don't want emails on smart devices. This can only be done on-prem. We're going to resist the
Or
cloud.
just cloud, yeah.
Right. We're in that period, but AI is inevitable. Like, I mean, it is here. It is going to continue to expand. I'm trying to use it as much as I can, again, to free myself up to do more high value use cases. And I think of the various agents that I use as I'm responsible for them, right? I've trained them, I put the data into them, I allow them to do. So there's going to be a moment of I'm almost their manager, I'm their leader, and therefore I'm going to have to be held responsible for what they do. So the technology is going to have to catch up to not only how do I hold Kevin Martin responsible for his cybersecurity, but how do I hold Kevin and his agents responsible for cybersecurity? I think it's here. We're just not controlling it as much as we want yet because it's growing so rapidly.
It's interesting to watch the conversation because measuring AI usage and are you doing it the right way? Are you putting financials in that are training a model? And now but a lot of programs are talking about like, how do we monitor Kevin in his utilization of it? And we'll go an hour into that conversation and then we'll wrap up and say, hey, out of curiosity, how are you thinking about that agent in your workforce in like 2 years? And how many employees will you have and they're like, we're talking about it, but it didn't come up in the conversation. It's not like, it doesn't feel like it's a right now problem, but it is a piano hanging above the head of, we're trying to get our arms around this 100,000 employees that I can look at and talk to and go into our HR system and look at. What will it be in a couple of years? So that is always the fascinating because we get so deep into it. And then we ask the next question of like, in 2 years from now, and that's when it's a very real trend to me because it's not like, hey, we haven't got there yet. We just haven't formalized what our plan is around that yet. So I find this is like a very emerging trend, a very early one, but something that is going to have to be dealt with.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I love our partners, right, the ones that we see day in and day out integrating into our enterprise environments, because they're already in your environments, right? It's, and when we think about identity, we're thinking about Okta, right? We're thinking about Microsoft, we're thinking about SailPoint. And I mean, even, on the endpoint, CrowdStrike, we're seeing them already starting to take the first move from an inventory and identity perspective. And look, we need that, right? As an HRM vendor, we're only as good as the data that you can give us from your environment.
Yep.
And so we're watching these vendors and saying like, where are you moving? And we called up some of them very early on and we said, look, we think there's a really interesting application here of HRM. If we can get the identity signal, we already have the behavior model, right? We can track and figure out who's doing what, where, when. And then of course we have threat intel signals as well coming from all of these different areas. And so like, we just needed like one center point of identity to be able to correlate around. And so I've been excited to see that identity market already moving here, already thinking about this. I think it'll be interesting to see how that progresses and like who's sort of leading the arms race there. I think some of them already have unique advantages, right? Whether you're sort of in the middle monitoring traffic, right? We can see that with some of the, the cloud web vendors. Cloudflare, I think, was doing some things here. And so what we're going to be looking for and what we need are customer design partners that are worried, thinking, wanting to be proactive about this as well and saying like, hey, I saw that, my new identity vendor just came out with something here. Like, that would be interesting for me to be able to take that data and correlate it with behavior, to be able to take that data and correlate it with threat, and really giving that 360-degree view, that triad picture, right, that we do for HRM with the humans, but over with their agents. And so when we think about kind of what got us here at Living Security, it's because we've had close customer intimacy. We've wanted to work with customers that like want to see progress and want to inform that progress. And so that's something I'm excited to spend some of my own time on, right? Going into 2026 is working with those forward-thinking, forward-leaning customers in the market.
And we can save this for a few slides from now when we talk about the CISO and risk. Getting more out of your other tools, right? So how can we make an identity tool more valuable?
Yeah.
Together, how do we make a service now, which is a huge investment, more valuable to leverage those workflows? So I think that sharing information, getting more value out of the tools you currently have, and showing a progression, a healthy progression from a risk profile, justifies spend. And when you talk about tech consolidation and what you're trying to focus on, CISOs are very focused on show me the results and make sure we're getting value out of the tools that we have now. And I think there's a play together story there that's an interesting one.
And I would encourage, our HRM program owners on the call, right? And I've seen a couple, friendly faces already showing up, like, ask the questions and figure out like where this lives in your org. Because at some point, just like the humans, right? You've already got your fingers there. I would expect that you're gonna see this, you're gonna hear about it, you're gonna need to be thinking about it. It may not be being spoken about in the rooms you're in today, but it is surely being talked about. And so how organizations form sort of like the organizational committees or different departments, or like how this gets embedded into the security teams, is going to be another interesting trend to watch. It's sort of, we saw SAT go for like, is this a security operations thing? Is this an HR thing? Is this an IT thing? Is this a GRC thing? Like a lot of companies are asking the question right now, like, where does AI agentic security sit? Right, there's an identity play, there's a governance play. And so we just need to be in those rooms, and we need to be a part of the conversation, and we need to bring intelligent thought leadership and ideas, because it's all happening, it's being constructed in front of us right now. And so there's an opportunity there to add value.
And I would encourage everybody on the call, everybody in the space, every time we're working with our SAT partners and they're kind enough to bring on somebody from the insider threat team or the SOC team or identity team, continuously it's, how do I get access to this data?
Mm-hmm.
How do I use this data? Do you have an API? And it is that security of like, in many we are one. I think in security often we have fiefdoms of like, this is what I'm responsible for and this is what I do. But all the data we're bringing together, to Mark's point, like CISOs want this in their other tools. They see the value that we could drive to other tools. All right, what's our next trend?
Right, yeah, I know we're running a little over on this one. All right. So this is thinking about maybe the other side, right? The employee side. Prediction 5 is, employees are going to start trusting AI more because it will help them, not police them. And so where is this coming from? There's been plenty of surveys out there. We were just recently at the Forrester Security and Risk Summit, where, it's a high majority of employees that are anxious, right? They're scared. We talk about leaders, CEOs, CIOs saying like, adopt AI, adopt AI. Well, of course they know what are they thinking about? They're thinking about scale, right? They're thinking about efficiency, which we are. But on the other hand, we have to think about, the trust and the culture that we're engaged with as well. And so if we know that our employees are concerned, if we know that they are anxious, but we also know, as Kevin said, that AI is here to stay, how do we be good stewards of culture? And I think security leaders already, they have an uphill battle. Because as a security team, like, we've historically been viewed as the no team, right? The person who was going to put up the roadblocks, like, I need to just get my job done. Like, why are you here stopping, making this harder, putting this friction in place? And so we've spent a lot of time, right? 8 years that we've been in market living security. Mark, you said it earlier, like why did we build escape rooms? Was it because we wanted to have fun? Sure. Like, of course, we want to have fun. Like, we're a fun team, fun company. But because we knew that if you can get people in a room, if you can start breaking down the barriers between your employees, you open up the conversation, that builds that cultural foundation. And so here we are again, right? We have new tooling this time, and we're trying to figure out how to handle it. So we need to take that same perspective and say, how do we build the foundation of trust with our team? We're not talking about MFA now, right? Or single sign, maybe we still are, but now we're talking about AI, and we know there's anxiety there, and we know it's coming from lots of angles. And so how can we build a culture of safety and a culture of trust? And, how can we use AI potentially as a tool to start amplifying that? And so that's what I want to talk about with this trend, where AI is becoming really more of that co-pilot helper for our teams, and they're going to feel less pressure and ideally make fewer mistakes.
I agree. I think AI, not only do I feel it's not policing me because it's just kind of operating in the background and processing and synthesizing, it also doesn't judge me. And I know this is a little bit more anecdotal, but if I have a dumb question, I can push it to AI and not feel like Mark's like, Kevin, you should really know this. Why are you asking this question? And I think there is eventually a world in cyber where end users can be asking questions such as, is this safe? How do I reset MFA? How do I do more things within the security space that they may be hesitant to reach out to somebody because they feel as if they should already know it. So I see AI has applicability there. Secondly, AI has the ability to hyper personalize, like we were talking about earlier. And I think anything in life, we're going to trust it more if we see it adding value to our life. If I see AI serving up more personalized training or ways for me to become more vigilant or more effective, then I'm going to begin to engage with it more. And the more I engage with it, the more I'm going to begin to trust it. So again, I think it comes down to that data analysis, personalization. Mark, how about you?
I mean, when I think about like AI and everyone was freaking out, am I going to lose my job? There were a bunch of people that said something along the lines of, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI,
Yeah.
right? And that to me, in my mid 40s, it really resonated because there are going to be people coming up that can just do things and you don't want to be on the outside looking in. I look at AI like my job today, as opposed to when we first worked together, I can't do what's asked of our team today without it.
Mhm.
So I have two choices: either miss goals and create contentious relationships or figure it out in a way that is secure and viable long term within the organization and repeatable. Um, and obviously, we saw some of the names here today and on here now. The programs are getting so big. Like the employees, you have 50, 100, 300, 500,000 employees. It's an unreasonable request to just shift behavior, change behavior, de-risk the organization. You need tools. What should I do? Where should I start? What's the output of this? If I was to do this, what could I expect? Just the guardrails that it can produce with you. And I've never really loved the term co-pilot, but then when we think about it from like what we do with our customers, it's like, I just need some help and like, show me what I can do. And I think that alleviates a lot of the fear that comes with making decisions for the first time. Like, how does this fit into our NIST framework? If I was to try to do this, what would you recommend? The comfort of the partnership and the data that comes back, I just think it's an imperative. It's like, it's not even a question anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for any industry, I've yet to meet a cybersecurity team or specific an SAT team that's overstaffed. Everybody we speak to is understaffed, over responsible. So AI can be an aid. It could be timely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brain just went somewhere on a tangent, but I'm going to bring it back home. We talked earlier about companies that take a block and deny approach, right, to AI, and then we like think about this, on the flip side of that, needing to we want people to utilize it, we want to build trust, and like at the end of the day, how do we start trusting something? It's like through exposure. And so I think there's actually an opportunity here for HRM teams to actually lean into the value proposition of enabling secure Gen AI agent interaction. How do we do that, right? So, if we have sanctioned models, we have, secure ways of interacting with it. Well, that could mean that, through monitoring of interactions, maybe people are attempting to go and utilize a different model. If we can pick that up, if we can get that data, well, our first indicator is this person is AI curious, right? They're utilizing it for something.
That's great.
Hopefully something that has, a positive impact on their job.
Yeah.
But okay, great, you want to do this. but like, do you have proper, data handling policies and procedures in mind, right? Are you typically a vigilant worker? Let's send you a quick reminder of data handling policy, right? Data classification. Maybe it's a redirect. Maybe, hey, like we see that you're trying to do this for your job. This is great. We love that. We want to encourage that. Did you know that we offer this sanctioned model that's actually trained on the company's data, and you can actually interact with it in a more secure way? So again, it's that question of how does 1, 2, 3 small SCT HRM team members do that for 300,000 people? You need automation to get that done. But like, if you can connect the dots to some of those core business initiatives and you can start driving that more securely, you can increase the exposure, therefore increasing the trust, right? Breaking down those barriers. And now, we're able to accomplish both goals at the same time.
And I think that's why it's such a big trend from before. It's doable now. It's doable now. Like there are things, if you want to congratulate somebody for reporting a fish and the goal of getting a 2-to-1 report rate, you can actually congratulate thousands of people within an hour with next to no work. And it's really appreciated by them. Or you want to change a policy, or you want to restrict access, or you want to send out a custom training. Like it's possible now. Whereas before it was a real challenge. We either need to staff it, we need to get a consultancy to help us with all. Now I'm going to create a rule that I always want to happen, and it will happen. And that's the exciting part. And I think that's why we're moving from that early adopter to that early majority, which is I've figured out how this fits, and now I see how it can scale. That's where the movement's coming from.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these AI use cases are the obvious, right? Like if this, then that, use the data, how are people interacting? How do I respond? I think this next trend takes us to kind of the art of the possible with AI, and how can we do least privilege and approach things a little bit differently.
Yeah, great segue, Kevin. So trend 6, and I think we have 7, so we're getting here towards the end, and definitely want to leave some time for Q&A. But trend 6 is we're predicting AI agents will force companies to rethink access controls from the ground up. So a little bit more in depth. I think companies are starting to realize that AI agents are holding some of the most powerful access privileges in the business. And most of that access hasn't even been reviewed, governed, or audited. And so 2026 is going to be the year we start asking, who approved this agent's access, Kevin? And your, army of agents that you have running. How do we revoke it, right? If that identity is to become compromised, what's the blast radius or the potential impact of an attack, right? So we're expecting some major changes in permissions, onboarding, and oversight, right? That governance function of AI agents this year. What do y'all think?
I think that this is the prosper peril, right? I mean, AI can have access to tremendous information, so we have to make sure we're controlling it. I look at this a little bit differently as well. When I think of AI agents and privilege, I think of eventually just-in-time provisioning that I think CISOs will become very interested in of, can we give you the access when you need the access? And is the data model strong enough to present itself to say, all right, Mark Collura is doing this specific thing and we need to give him access at this time. But then back to your point of then how do we then revoke it? How does the AI say the model no longer needs this? And how do we take that information out? So there's huge possibility here with AI to make companies more secure with the use of AI, I think.
I mean, we talked to, it was Edna, Larry Whiteside at HRM conference that they talked about it rolls up to an employee. Like it all starts somewhere. So it's not as impossible as it sounds, right? So fundamentally, it's relatively simple story there. Where it gets really interesting is I think it's almost poking a bruise on what's happening today with access and controls. There are so many exceptions. Like when we're onboarding people, we can look at it and you can look at thousands of people that were granted an exception 2-3 years ago, whether it was access, whether it was a third-party device, whatever it may be. And they still have that access. Every year it just goes through a cycle and gets approved. there's already concern about that. When you add in agents to that, I don't even know where the problem ends at that point. So like,
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point, right? Like, there's a couple things that keep me up at night around this. And like you were getting to one. So it's the scale, right? So we know that, companies are ultimately restricted on how many employees they can hire by like what's on their balance sheet.
Right.
So there's like an end, right? Like there's an end to the human capital issue. It's like how big can your budget expand? When it comes to agents, that scale is endless. And so you can't effectively go through an audit review. Like there's no manual review or
Right.
process
Mhm.
that will ever suffice for, I believe, the number of agents that companies will have working, or like you have people working around the clock, right? And
Yep.
so, and then what we're going to end up with is agents reviewing agents, because you're going to have that many agents to go review all the other ones, and so your problems compounded. Agents are non-deterministic, right? Like, and so we've had non-human identities in our environment for years, right? For decades. But like the non-human identities of the past were like X in, Y out, right? It was, you knew what they were doing, why, when, how often, you could track it, you could monitor it. But like autonomous agents were like purpose built to solve problems. Like we want them to do that. We want them to be quote unquote thinking, right? Like, and like actually like trying to go get a job done. But what makes them so powerful is what makes them risky. So, right, that's my other concern, is that we know that the way that you're designed, in generative AI as well, it's generative by nature. It's going to continue to expand. It's going to change. So it's the scale problem. It's the non-determinism of the agents. And then it's like their relentless pursuit, right? AI agents do not sleep.
Right. Exactly right.
And so I think I never brought this up when we were doing our talk, but like if they want to try something, like they're never going to tire. They're gonna just keep going after it, and they're gonna like look this way and this way and this way, and like eventually they're gonna find their way in. And so like these are not problems we faced in the past.
right.
And so that is why I'm trying to remember what our trend was here to before I get off topic. That's why we have to throw out. I think we have to throw out. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. But like I think teams are starting to challenge themselves and say, like, this is the way of the past. Like, let's go ground zero. Like, if we're gonna rebuild identity, we're gonna rebuild how we think about this, like in this new world. Like now is the time. And I think this is what's happening, right? In the boardrooms, in the Zoom rooms of the major companies that are out there. They're saying like it's time to just rethink how we've done it in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like you said, agents don't sleep, or agents don't sleep. It's opportunity, peril, it's both. We just got a lot of questions in here from Leanne. Ashley, I'm going to use one as a lead into your next and final trend. And so one of the questions here is CISOs adopt real outcomes to track and measure reduced risk? How long must metrics be tracked to show a real reduction of risk? Which to your trend, what is risk reduction? So why don't you take us into the next trend here?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And Mark, if you maybe push to the next slide, I think, we put up a few examples of things that our customers are starting to report on. But yeah, I mean, like what we're starting to see here from a trend perspective is boards are tired. They've been looking at the same 2 to 3 human related metrics for the last 10, 15 years. It's, are we compliant? Do we have 100% completion? What's our click rate and what's our report rate? And honestly, like program owners are scared to send out harder phishing emails because they know that if they do that, like that metric might tick up. And all of a sudden, like the CISO is going to say, why is my click rate up? And then all of a sudden the board's going to say, why is our click rate up? And how do we compare to other people? And like, that's just not the right mentality. And so when we think about, what does, I'll get back to your question, like what does a metric that matter look like? At the very highest level, and I think other vendors may have other ones, like we look at a risk index, right? That's comprised of behavior, threat, identity across the entire org. And so looking at a trend of an index that is comprised of actual behavioral data, actual threat data, actual identity data, and how that trends and ticks over time, right? That's going to give you a high level view. But then we need to go down and we need to click in and say, okay, let's look at the things that matter and can start telling a story and also give us ways to focus our resources and to make changes. And so if we think about those factors below that, we might say, okay, how is behavior, right? And I'm gonna say like kind of grand behavior, how are we observing our behavior of our employees? That's gonna be made up of, we'll of course have some phishing sim in there, but we'll have real phishing. We'll have how people are interacting with the web, right? What they're browsing. What's their password security look like? What's their data handling look like? So high level behavior. And then you can click down again. We'll also look at like how threatened are we, right? How are we seeing attacks coming in and are they getting through? And are people being exposed to that? And then the identity thing as well. Some of our customers are looking at things like high phishing susceptibility, right? Those high risk users, the ones that are in that perfect triad of poor behavior, highly threatened, large blast radius if they're compromised. And they're going to look and say, if I take that cohort, can I track and trend that over time? And can I show a reduction of users in that cohort, right, over time? And to get back to your other question, like how long does it take to do that? It depends on what metric you're looking at. If you're looking at the highest level metric, right, it's going to take some time to start showing the trends because things are going to end up normalizing. But if you can get more granular, we've seen 60, 90, 120 days, you can start moving the needle on 1 to 2 things if you get really focused. And we can start showing progress on a more granular level that will continue to bubble up. And you just keep pushing away, keep hacking away at those behaviors, at those risk indexes. What do boards want to see? They want to see first, like, do you have the visibility? Give me confidence that you actually know what's going on in your environment. So that's step one. Once they have the visibility, they're going to say, okay, do we know where our soft spots are, where our risk areas are,
Exactly.
right? And then the next question, logical question, Mark, you said it. What's the plan?
No.
What am I going to do? So is there like a magical metric? I would say no. I think there's many metrics you can use depending on like the board, the culture of the organization, how it bubbles up and fits into your enterprise risk management dashboard. Certainly, we're aiming to create a standard with the HRI within the industry where it's recognized, much like the phishing click rate is. You might have to start at different levels of metrics within your organization. But like boards really care about confidence, they care about progress, and they care about you coming back and saying that I did what I said I was going to do. Here were the results that I had, and here's what I learned, and here's what I'm going to do next. And so that's the conversation that we're going to start having in the boardroom, and frankly, many of our customers are already having.
Well said. I can tell you for me, for the companies that are coming to me talking about the programs they want to implement, where they want to be in 26 and 27, it's exactly that. Compliance is table stakes. It's expected of us. It's not to differentiate anymore. That's my job. Where I'm going to differentiate my program is how I can prove I'm reducing risk. How can you help us do that? Mark, why don't we stop the screen share and we'll jump to the Q&A. Let's see here. Some of these questions have come up throughout the presentation, so I don't want to go through them all, but let me see. So workforce management, Ashley, I'll start with you here because I'm going to give you 2 questions in one, Ashley. When humans and AI agents are managed as one workforce, who owns accountability when something goes wrong, a la what Kevin spoke to this earlier? And then the second question, unrelated, though, is how is living security supporting these trends in 2026?
Oh, good question. So question one, I think it's yet to fully be understood. I think there will be and we're starting to see this in some of the identity systems, but you mentioned something like, who is this person's manager? And so like who created, right? Who's responsible for? And so then there's like human accountability. So I believe there will be human accountability for AI agents. Is that going to be the like individual employee, or is that going to be some sort of team that manages the agents? That's what's yet to completely unfold today. And so I think there'll be a lot of maturity that's happening there. I think it's going to also depend on the organization and who is essentially creating them to go do their jobs. And so individuals that are allowed to use independent tools, right? I think they're going to have accountability on them. But if a team is standing up a set of agents within the SOC to go, then help to automate and drive orchestration, is that one person or is there like a governance team that's responsible? Those are interesting questions. The second one, how are we helping? As I mentioned, with our platform that we're launching in January into beta, which we're, I think, under 30 days away from. We're really excited. If any of you have signed up, you have emails in your inbox waiting to set up your sign up meeting, your kickoff meeting. So step one, we are going to bring in that inventory and that privilege information. We want to give you visibility. And at the end of the day, this is where we started with human risk management, right? We started with visibility. Let's get the signals in. Let's understand what our workforce looks like. And then let's start putting some meaningful data and insight behind it. So we're going to do the same thing with agents. And so who in your organization is using AI? What AI agents are running within your workforce? Next step is what privileges and what access do they have? Right. And so that kind of gives us that first snapshot of identity or agent identity risk that we're looking for. Next step is applying that behavioral and threat model and start looking at it continuously. Then what I think will occur is we're going to now have the visibility and we're going to actually be able to ascribe some sort of risk guardrails, right? As you can imagine. So here are the guardrails that we're putting up. When an agent is operating within those guardrails, awesome. Let them do their job. But the minute that you start seeing risk creep up, that's when we want to spend our time. That's when we want to be alerted. That's when we want to take to have an actual human in the loop, right? Observe what's going on. And then at some point, we're going to automate some of those decisions. Is this, we're going to completely shut it down? Possibly and likely. Is it going to be, can we train them to operate back inside the guardrails? Do we remove access from that agent to get them back into, what an acceptable risk level is? Those are the things that we're thinking about. We're talking the next 12, 24, even 36-month roadmap for living security, but going to be interesting times.
They're exciting times. I think who is going to be accountable for the access to the agent to be determined by company, but the means to measure and monitor and put guardrails around it, regardless of the owner, are necessary. And that's where we're going to be investing. I think we got time maybe for one last question, Mark. I'll throw it your way, and then Ashley, we can wrap up. Mark, thinking of this as human risk or agent risk, one of the questions here is, do you think there'll be a world where you could assign a risk score or something similar to an AI agent, a means to measure like we're doing it with a human today?
Why not? Yeah. I would argue, I think we're moving in the direction that they are employees. Everyone that's impacting the org should have a profile, right? Whether it's a cyber score, an efficiency score. How do you look at it as a CEO, right? There's a score of the employee. Your cyber score should be a subset of that. So agent or W-2'd employee, I don't really see the difference. I think it is going in that direction pretty quickly.
Yeah. We're also thinking about how does the behavior of the agent, right, the risk profile of the agent interact with the risk profile of the user, right?
Sure.
And so that was something you brought up earlier. And so, again, a lot of this is unfolding. We're staying close to it. Our customers are staying close to it. And so we want to continue the conversation much like we had here and continue to bring guests on to these webinars and hear how you're thinking about it, what questions you're asking. So I think I'm looking at the questions again. So we talked a little bit about this one, but encouraging employees who are resistant to adopting AI. And we did talk about that. We talked about exposure. But I would just, be curious, like you guys have seen me or come to our company all hands. We've seen some team members that have shown resistance, some that haven't. I've seen, many that haven't. I've seen some turnarounds stories, but, as a team member, right, and interacting with your coworkers, like, what are you seeing work? And, when I come and say like, hey guys, you gotta go after this, you're hearing the conversations after that conversation. So what do you guys hear on the ground?
One of the more effective things you did is probably 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was yourself and Drew Rose, our other co-founder. You gave a presentation as to all the ways in which we're using AI today, and we don't realize we are, right? And it was a presentation. I think we had Matt from our team and our engineering team walk through in your inbox today in Gmail. Did you realize AI? And it was 20 concrete examples of things that I already enjoy, I already trust, I've already integrated into my everyday life that I never thought of as AI until you pointed them out. And it was like, oh yeah, I really have adopted AI already. I'm just resisting using it in new ways. So I think that's an easy way for enterprises to kind of show end users, AI is part of your daily life. How can you help better yourself with it more?
Maybe a little training content opportunity for Living Security's content team.
There you go.
What about you, Mark? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our scenario is unique. I mean, I don't think you've tried to hide it at all, that this is where we're going, right? So you need to be on board with it. The people that I get most concerned about are the people that think they're doing AI and they're using, it's basically Google.
Right.
We're just Googling things. And we're telling ourselves we're doing more than we are. It's the next phase of it. So what I've appreciated is the candor of the direction, and the utilization isn't a request. I think for large orgs, where you scale it is how do you enable it, right? I could have all the desire in the world. How do I figure it out? And there is some self-learning that needs to be done, but there's also, this is how we're going to use these tools, right? I'm not going to just slap your hand when you're doing it incorrectly. There are guardrails, however you want to phrase it. But whether it's a smaller company like ours or a Salesforce, it's clear what's happening. Like, get on board with this. And if you need support, where do you go to get that? How do I use it securely? Whatever that may be. But it's just so front and center now, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I'll kind of wrap up this conversation with just one more thought. So, look, like obviously being a startup tech company, we're bringing on innovators, like people that like want to be utilizing these things in their personal life. If we think about large enterprises, you've got people, right, at all ends of the innovation spectrum. And so they may not be at home spending their time like vibe coding, right? Like I do. But so how do we do that at work? How do we encourage? I'd say give them the space, right? Like carve out even a half day or a couple hours and say like, go test, go try it, go play, right? And like knowing that sort of time for innovation, maybe the Google mentality in a sense is going to start encouraging that adoption and make it less fearful. So I see Leanne's back on the screen and it looks like we are here to the top of the hour. So, I personally just want to thank, everyone for coming and attending, also for helping to be part of the development of these trends, right? For engaging conversations, whether that's at a dinner or a conference that we've been on the road all year. We'll continue to be back on the road in 2026, but that's where a lot of these things are curated, right? They're in the dinner conversations and saying like, what are you thinking about? What's coming? And we're, going to continue to do our job, stay on top of it, and build them into our platform and our product, and give you opportunities, whether it's through beta or through design partnerships, to get engaged early. And Mark and Kevin, thank you both for joining as well.
Thank you.